So I'd like to thank you guys for joining us. What we have here today is a discussion around the future of collaborative work environments. As we all know, a lot of things have changed in the industry. A lot of things have changed with work. A lot of things have changed with our lives. These are industry leaders and thought leaders that have been involved in this and are there to tell us about their experiences. We're here to have a casual conversation about what that means to us and what the future holds. With me, I have Jill Porubovic, Rodney Burden, and Ryan Altschul. Ryan's with Cerami, Rodney is with Warner Brothers Discovery, and Jill Porubovic, Consulting.
Enough, Jill P.
Jill P.
Jill P.
We're going to dive into today, talk a little bit about what the future of collaborative spaces look like for us, what our experiences are. I hope you guys enjoy. So let's start with Jill. Jill P. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about how you got into consulting and what your expertise is in the technology space.
Okay, so Jill P, really, you don't have to worry about the last name. I'm about 30 years in IT. I was lucky enough to work with Rodney for 12 and a half years at Discovery. And I got into my own consulting firm in 2020. They offered a voluntary separation package to leave Discovery, and I was like, why not, you know?
So I said, why? And I cried. Mama Jill.
And it was a big step for me, but I think every leader has their time. And I know for me, I had to really figure out what I loved. And I love the dirty work in technology. I'm a great strategist and all those things, but I really love the dirty work of IT. So getting in at the working level and working alongside everybody in the hard stuff.
Rodney, Warner Brothers Discovery. Tell us a little bit about your tenure. I know the Warner Brothers thing is new, but you've been with Discovery for a while. Obviously, you and Jill know each other. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your role and responsibilities.
All right. So November will mark 20 years for me at Discovery, or Warner Brothers Discovery now. So for me, Director of Workforce Technology, I have Zoom Phone, mobile, IPTV, and AV and live events under me. So started there, and kind of worked my way up and, worked with people like Jill that kind of, saw my potential and kind of let me do my thing. So I get to play with toys a lot and, it's a good gig to have.
Perks of the job, right?
Yes.
And Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Cerami does and kind of what your role is with the organization?
Sure. So we are a specialty consultant to the architecture, engineering, and consulting and construction world. And so we fall into place as supporting architects as they support their clients in large construction projects that span anywhere from 250 to 3 million square foot projects. And I fall in right inside of our technology strategy group. And so we provide a lot of assistance to the clients as they start to talk through what it is that we're actually going to do with this enormous amount of space we're going to spend a lot of money on, and how it is that people work and what technology supports them inside of the way that they work. And we do that through audiovisual, IT, security, and in the unseen environment of acoustics.
Awesome, thank you. So my first line of questioning is kind of going to be open to all you guys. I want you guys to collaborate, to talk, to conversate. I want this to be friendly and laid back. We all know over the past 6, 12, 18 months or so, the world as we know it has been kind of flipped on its ear, right? The workplace as we know it has dramatically changed. Whether you're talking about collaboration, whether you're looking at multi-platform content sharing, whether you're looking at video adoption, remote work, hybrid work, all of these things that everyone is faced with all the time. I really want to hear your voices on what that means to you guys and what has changed. So I'll start with you, Jill.
It's so interesting, especially living through the pandemic. I had about 300 people in 32 countries at Discovery, and we were responsible for all at-home workers. So it was quite an experience to live through. And I think the biggest benefit is that executives learned how to set up their own conference call, join their own conference call, and troubleshoot their own conference call, which was a huge step ahead. But the challenges that came with it, of course, is that ability to collaborate and work from home and finding those things, especially as we go now back into the workplace and getting people back in there and finding out what the next new technology things are going to be. Getting back into the conference rooms is really challenging.
Would you say that is one of the biggest obstacles, if not the biggest obstacle for decision makers?
Absolutely. It's challenging too because at the working level, they don't really understand what's needed. And you get to ask that why question all the time, like, what are we doing here? And I say that to executives, like, what's your why? As you make this next stage into back into work, you should always be looking at your workspace, but I think more than ever, they need to think about what their why. Why are people coming into the office? And how are you going to build out that collaboration space?
Right. So it's more about the function of the room rather than just having the room.
Yeah, and like getting your humans back in there and sending them to come back in.
Interesting. Do you think that's going to stay the same moving forward? Do you think that's a challenge that's unique right now because of where we are? Or do you think that this is something where, hey, the future has changed and this is what you need to be thinking about from here on?
I think any executive that wants to try to control their operation costs, which will keep going through the roof with cloud and SaaS-based products, has to think about what they're going to do to control those costs. You can't keep laying people off, right? At some point, you need to look at the cost for your SaaS products and everything else and figure out from a physical workspace, your footprint for facilities, how to shrink your footprint and make the most of that space, which I'll say, like, Discovery did an amazing job very early on in 2017. We got it wrong a couple times of hoteling and having really unique spaces. So we learned early on how to change the dynamic and make the workforce take an office space that needs to fit 2,000 people, but it only fits 1,000.
How do you make it work?
We did.
Right.
Yeah. And it kind of put us on that path, right? So before the pandemic hit, we were kind of already getting into that agile working space.
Right.
And we had already, our headquarters in Silver Spring was closing. And we were, we had to relocate some of those people to smaller offices. So like Jill said, we had people working from home. So we were kind of already in that mode. So when the pandemic did hit, we were ready, in essence, to be successful.
Right, you guys were a bit ahead of the curve. So
Sure.
when that shift happened and a lot of businesses were caught floundering because they weren't prepared,
Yeah.
you guys were ahead of the curve getting it done.
Yeah, we made a decision to get rid of desktops, give people laptops. So, they were ready on that aspect. We had VPN already ready. We had Zoom rolled out. We were starting to build out Zoom rooms. So from the coming back to it piece of it, our rooms were ready, but we had already moved to Zoom, and it made things a lot easier for our users.
I just also want to say one more thing, and goes to the executives in making decisions, or even at the working level making decisions. When the pandemic hit, we had just signed a deal with Zoom, which we'd already used for Zoom Phone.
Right.
Pandemic hits, every executive needs to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to them. We're 2 months in, I'm like, go pull every phone out of the office. We've just proven they don't need their desk phones. Yank those babies out of there. We're expediting our move to Zoom Phone and getting out of it as soon as possible for the Avaya system.
Yeah,
So when people came back, there were no phones.
yeah.
So opportunist, right? What can you do in that moment when,
Strike while the
yeah,
iron's hot.
absolutely.
You got to be able to move. You got to be agile.
Don't tell me you need that phone when you come back.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think there's an important place that you have to be looking across functions as well. Even at the executive level, you need to be looking at, you can't just have real estate making decisions anymore, or HR making decisions, or IT making decisions. Every person around that table, every executive is now intimately affecting shareholder value. Top line, bottom line, and it's happening. And so when an IT organization can take the position of I'm affecting top line and bottom line as well, and stepping up and into that is, I think, very important, because we can have a little bit of this tendency of being somewhat of the consumers, right? We're spending all of this money, we're spending. But what is it that we're doing that's either driving productivity that has an actual dollar value attached to it, or we're creating environments that are important for people, or that make them work better, or have a better experience, and therefore our product is better, and we're affecting top line. So I think it's very important that at every level, across every type of division, that there is that focus and that mindset on how am I supporting the business and driving value.
Right. Gone are the days of being so silent, right? And then we've mentioned Zoom, we've mentioned other technologies. To me, and again, I'm curious as your thoughts, but the technology isn't really what matters. Whether you're using WebEx, whether you're using Zoom, whether you're using Microsoft, it doesn't matter. What matters is the outcomes you're trying to achieve. And there will always be a path, right, depending on what brand people focus on. But it's the matter of thinking ahead of what the outcomes are going to be, designing space and figuring that out and really understanding that. That's important. How have you seen, Mr. Cerami, that change the conversation that you're having?
So, I mean, beforehand, there was video conferencing. It maybe was in select rooms. It had some sort of select application for select people. So we've certainly seen the democratization of that across video, specifically across every kind of locale and medium that you could possibly meet in. And then I think the other important place that it's really happening is inside the conversation of what is it that we actually do here? What is it that this team is actually doing? Right. Do we need to create one-off solutions to support a team? Or does what that team does need to flow through an entire organization? And so we're asking questions about what is it that you do? What are you doing? What is happening around you? How are you working together? What spaces are you building? Right? So architecture over the last 20 years has talked about activity-based working, right? So, I work here because I need quiet space, and I work here because I need to collaborate with my team. How does technology follow that and escalate so that my experience on my phone is the same as my desktop, is the same as my conference room, whether it's a huddle room or a medium or a large, or it could even be the same as the conference center. And so those are the questions of what is it that we do, how do we do it, and what makes most sense to apply broad strokes or fine point pens.
And I think we've all gotten smarter as well at every level, where it used to be the dictation of, I want this room to be all glass, right, all the things. And we kind of used to just suck it up and build the thing and then go back in and rebuild the thing because it wouldn't work well. So I think we do have a better voice now because there have been a lot of missteps on those rooms, and that collaboration now is a lot cleaner than it used to be with facilities and even getting the requirements from the business partners.
So I'm curious, Rodney, given what we've heard so far, I feel like I got to ask you this. In this deployment now, this model, this where we are, how does that affect teams like yours? Are you guys getting more support calls where you need to be helping end users? Are end users getting more competent because technology is now so fully integrated into the workspace, especially the last couple of months and years here? Right. It's how has that changed for you and your team?
Our calls have gone down. So, it used to be, back before the pandemic, way back when we had these fully, automated, integrated conference rooms, we were at every meeting. Every meeting we had to go, we had to set it up, we had to stand guard outside, or we were on the phone listening to make sure, nothing went. Yeah,
everyone.
You came running down the hall, brother. But now, no. So, with the way things are, with things as easy as they are, or, have gotten easier, yeah, it's self-service. We have a one-page guide that we have laminated on the tables in our conference rooms. So users can go in, they get themselves set up. We have our hotline on that card. We have our hotline on TV, but calls have gone down. So if it's something extreme, right. System may have locked up or TV's not on or something like that. But for day-to-day calls, our users are doing it themselves.
That's awesome. Jill, from your perspective, I know you handle a lot with mergers and acquisitions in regards to technology. Are you seeing that across all verticals, or is that something that's unique to Warner Brothers Discovery?
M&As are something that are near and dear to my heart, so I've done probably 25 of them. Some very large, some small, all equally as challenging for different ways. And what I really see happening is it used to be a little bit easier with client server doing M&As, even though it took forever. It's more challenging now, and I think there's a misnomer that when you merge and you have like technologies, you both have Okta, you both have Slack, you both have Zoom, that the executives think this is going to be easy and there's going to be cost savings. And it's actually kind of the opposite, That's super hard. It's easier if you have like 2 PAM solutions and you can just say, oh, yeah, give me your best deal. Great, we're moving to you. But if you have 2 of the same and you're trying to integrate, all the heft of that work falls to the line level people, the dirty work, right? If you have a managed merger and you have somebody that's come in like McKinsey, BCG, Deloitte, et cetera, they don't know the dirty work. It is only the IT teams that know the dirty work. And if you had 30 applications prior to SaaS, you have 300 now, right? So you have 300, you have Slack Enterprise Grid, Slack Enterprise Grid, and the biggest challenge right now is that those companies don't know how to integrate themselves, right? So we're learning together how to integrate all these platforms, and there's so many of them, it's just super challenging.
From Ryan, your perspective, with these changes, with these shifts, with this power user that we've all become, right, in the workplace, how is that affecting real estate footprint? Are businesses downsizing? Are businesses slowing down expansion into territories? Has the hybrid model, the remote work accessibility that we all have now, has that changed that trajectory at all, that roadmap?
So there's certainly a continuum, right? You have organizations that are bringing everyone back to the office, and you have organizations that are saying we're going to be 100% remote from now on. Don't ever come to an office. There will be no real estate footprint. I think that actually draws itself a little bit towards the vertical market of that organization. However, I think the big picture is everyone actually exists somewhere in the middle. And you may have existed that way for a very long time. And the question now, though, is what is the best use of the spaces that we're creating? And so it can't be just technology telling you what you're going to get into a real estate space. And it can't be just real estate saying, this is what the furniture is going to look like. The only way that deployments will be successful is when all of these groups are working together to create an outcome that they've all agreed on as the outcome. And so, we're seeing big shifts in organizations tearing down giant buildings to rebuild them again. And we're seeing some people going completely remote and creating kind of this hub and spoke model of, there is the headquarters, but there's also all of these small collaboration sites around the nation or around the world. So it is very much, again, I would say along the lines of activity-based working and what it is that I do that makes it good for me to be in the office or helpful. What interactions will I have? What collisions will I have with other people? If I'm coming into my empty office, well, I could sit in my empty office in my house and do that. But if I'm having collisions or interactions or just happening to see people that I haven't seen in a long time, I live in Philadelphia. I came up here to the New York office, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw people in person that I haven't seen. It was a great experience, right? And I showed pictures of my kids at all whom I've had during the pandemic. So it was like, this kind of shared experience. And if that's the outcome, shared experiences in the office space, well, then that needs to be the focus. And what technology can come alongside that and support that?
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I think you've touched on furniture. I think everyone kind of understands that there's been a shift of gear too in terms of what you think about in these spaces, right? And it's not all technology. Now, you look at some stuff that's no longer there. Cisco had products that were rooms in a box, right? Down to lighting, down to paint on the walls. Those have shifted out of favor, I think, in the last few years, but now you're seeing a progression back into paying attention to that. And Cisco's one example where they own the experience in the room as well as the platform that drives that experience. You see Microsoft leaning in that direction more now, where they want to own the experience in the room. I want to hear from each one of you on this. In terms of the end user and their experience, where, like you said, coming into work, I feel like the shift has been, I don't come into work to work anymore. I come into work to collaborate. and those spaces. It's about the experience in those spaces. No one wants to commute to sit at a desk and pound away at the keys. You want to come in there to work off of the folks that you have a job with. I want to hear from you guys on what your thoughts are on that.
Well, for us, I mean, Discovery, we got away from the cubicles, right? That was the big thing. So now, excuse me, all of our spaces are open spaces. They're agile. No one has an assigned desk. So it makes it easier to collaborate. You can see people. Kind of a fully functional office. We have meeting spaces, you have your huddle spaces and what have you. So you have your quiet areas where you can go if you want to get away from all of that. So I think that's where we are going, and where, with all of our newer offices, or, even we've gone back and retrofitted some to do the same so we can have that collaboration.
And in that regard, are you talking furniture? Are you talking
Yes.
paint schemes, lightings, and so on?
Yes, everything is kind of changed, and like I said, the days of cubicles are gone. So except for my office, it's the older office. we still have.
Of course.
Hey, save the best for last. But no, like in our New York office, that we work with Cerami to help design and collaborate with that. It's all open. You walk in, you can see from one end to the other. And I want to say it kind of started in our London office.
It was in the London office.
They kind of spearheaded that, and then that model kind of took hold and has kind of moved its way around the world for all of our offices.
And I just want to say that, like, when we started that venture in 2017, we didn't know what we were doing. And we had lots of different office options. Everybody, like he said, there's no offices really. It was all just clean space. But they developed these neighborhoods, and in each neighborhood there was kind of a unique flavor. So we had like a phone booth. There were multiple phone booths people could use. There were two things that people could be inside of. And then we had this amazing like 6-unit thing that was freestanding that people could go into, which was one of the most popular things. And when we talk about lessons learned and the things that you don't think of, so it was great, it was well used. People sweated to death in there because it was so hot because there was no ventilation. Okay, we add ventilation. Guess where the ventilation was added? Behind the speaker, right? So guess what people heard in there? Right. The speaker. So you got to move that. So all these trial and errors until you get to the point where now you're in a jam, right? You know what these spaces are and how they work, both furniture-wise and with the humans, and the reason you come to work, to collaborate.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that could be very daunting in that conversation is, I don't know about architecture, I don't know about furniture. You can't get me to design, my half bath in my house. You definitely don't want me to design your pretty office space. So, what am I going to do as a technology professional interacting with these people that speak a completely different language? And by the way, I have my full-time job, which is not this. And so that's when partners come in that you can lean on, that can either have those conversations in a way that, can translate conversations, or that can actually just come in and say, look, here we go. We'll just take it from here, and we'll talk the design, and we'll talk ventilation and heating and cooling and electrical. And then we'll have on the side, we'll have our techie conversations.
Here's a fun one for me. Pew Research recently announced that the largest generational provider for workforce right now is millennials. We, because I kind of fall into the tail end of that. Fortunately, unfortunately, I'm not entirely sure.
Didn't you just say you were?
No. With that being said, by 2025, the expectation is they'll make up 75% of the workplace, right? Speaking as one of them, we are a generation who grew up with devices in hand, right? Video at our fingertips. I can't think of a day that goes by in my life that I'm not on video with someone, and not just because I work in this industry. That goes for everyone I know. Mm-hmm. With that in mind, are you guys seeing a shift in targeting new talent or retaining new talent? Do you guys have any insight into what companies are planning for technology-wise to interest new group of the able-bodied workforce?
I think this goes back to what's the why, right? I think now's the time, whether it's the pandemic or anything else, that companies need to ask themselves, recruiting is challenging. It's not that there's not people that don't want to be hired. It's not that there's not jobs, but that in-between piece is really challenging right now. And it's because the workforce has changed somewhat, whether it's millennials or old ladies that quit their jobs, and that want something different. And I think most companies recognize the need to do things different. The client I'm working for right now has amazing snacks, amazing drinks, right? They bring in lunches and all that kind of stuff. But the office itself is not like a hoteling space. And I say it's like cattle gates that they have to run in and out of, right? So they'll need to make that adjustment. I think it's the team that really looks at that strategy of what do I want this office to be, and how am I going to support not only the people that are there, but the new people coming in. You're just going to have to, in some cases, kind of rethink and gut and pilot. We did pilot like one room that's different. It's amazing, and everybody loves it. And it is like a hoteling space. So I think, you have to be willing to try all those things and understand that it has to change.
What are you doing what are they doing in terms of getting that feedback? Is it something where they're polling workers? Is it something where they're planning with certain folks?
I would say planning with certain folks. I certainly encourage polling the workers. Oftentimes when you poll the workers, they still don't really heed what the workers had to say. So that's a challenging thing when the workers' response is, oh, we want to work remote 90% of the time. The company's like, great, come back 3 days a week, right? So polling the workers can be a little challenging. You don't really want to do that. You kind of want to...
Well, polling them's easy. It's giving them what they want is technically the difficult part.
It leaves a sour point in people's mouths for sure if you do that.
I would just say, flag, this is a great conversation that technology and HR should be having together. And so it's not the silo of HR does the recruiting, go find, whoever it is you're going to find. And it's not real estate builds a building to shove them in. And it's not the technology builds, conference room technology that they can do whatever they do. It's how do we work together and have this conversation as a whole that we're driving forward.
And I just want to add to that, and legal and because,
and.
Right, you get the job descriptions and almost everybody is looking for like a remote, a work from home, something when they're doing their searches. And if that's not part of your job description, you haven't made a statement about it, nobody's searching for that job.
Right. I think that's a really good point. I think that impact is definitely experienced, and you hear all the time in our industry cross-architecture, right? That's the new buzzword. That's the new game changer. I think really organizations need to look internally sometimes and say cross-architecture across all of our different departments of how do we ensure that everyone's getting kind of a point to speak at what will work for them, and how do you blend all that together in a way that makes the most sense for the company itself, for the entity to grow and thrive and expand. And I think that's something that a lot of companies are starting to realize one way or another, sometimes by force, sometimes by habit. But I really think that's something that's contributing to the change in the mindset of what the future of a workplace looks like. Rodney, what's the single most impactful lesson that you've learned throughout your tenure? And how has it better prepared you for the future?
I guess don't be afraid to change. Right, like that's the biggest thing, right?
Oh,
so
no.
it is. I mean, so you have to embrace it. I mean, it's been constant change for us at Discovery, Warner Brothers Discovery now, right? So that was part of the change. So I think just embrace it and roll with it.
Ryan, what's something that you wish businesses would put more thought into when planning, whether it's renovation or expansion into new areas?
You're going to have to design towards what people are going to be doing. And if you don't know what that is, you have to design to be able to figure it out. And so if rooms have to be flexible, sized right, oriented the right way in order to do something. I read a quote today. Everyone wants equity in video conferencing, whether when in the room or remote, because the best work comes when everyone can bring their best self. And so if your design is around bringing people together to do the best work that they possibly can, then let's build that. and involve all of the partners. We've already talked about the and of who the partners are, and the external partners, the internal partners, because that is the only way you're going to be able to create something for everyone. And start early.
All right. Well, thank you guys again for joining us tonight. This was an awesome conversation.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.